Good morning. Today we'll be looking at the text The Dancer of Kannur, written by William Dalrymple. William Dalrymple is a Scottish historian and writer, an art historian and curator, as well as a broadcaster and critic. He is a cousin of Virginia Woolf, and he was educated at the Ampleforth College and Trinity College, Cambridge, where he was first a history exhibitioner and then a senior history scholar. Dalrymple first came to Delhi on 26 January 1984 and has lived in India on and off since 1989. His wife Olivia is an artist and comes from a family which has connections to India. Dalrymple's interests include the history and art of India, Pakistan and Afghanistan, Middle East, the Muslim world, Hinduism, Buddhism, the Jainism, and the early Eastern Christianity. All of his 8 books have won literary prizes, and the first 3 books were travel books based on his journeys in Middle East, India, and Central Asia. And his early influences include travel writers such as Robert Byron, Eric Newby, and Bruce Chatwin. So, his major works include In Xanadu, City of Jinns, A Year in Delhi, From the Holy Mountain, A Journey in the Shadow of Byzantium, The Age of Kali, White Mughals, The Last Mughal, 9 Lives in Search of the Sacred in Modern India, and so on. As we look at the titles of the books written by William Dalrymple, we understand that most of them have its basis on India. And Dalrymple believes that with the increase of globalization, with the great impact it has on the world today, the role of a travel writer has changed from a mere description of the place to an interpretation of the complexity of the globalized world. And he believes that it is not simply a description and it functions differently from the colonial period. For him, travel writing is more like poetry and um, it has its relevance, it has its universal relevance at almost all periods of history in most cultures. 9 Lives is one of his well known books, and it is about the lives of 9 Indians who include a Buddhist monk, a Jain nun, a lady from a middle class family in Calcutta, a prison warder from Kerala, an illiterate goatherd from Rajasthan, a Devdasi, and so on. The relevance of this book is that each individual represents a different religious path. For example, The Dancer of Kannur is a story of Haridas, a Dalit and a manual laborer, a prison warder, and a Thayam dancer. Before we move into the text, it is necessary that we need to have a basic understanding of Thayam. Suthayam is a sacred ritual art form that dates back to at least 1500 years, and it is usually performed before the village shrine, groves, or in some joint family houses as ancestor worship with elaborate rites and rituals. The word Thayam literally means Devam, God, and hence the Thayam dance is known as the dance of gods. The Thayam dance is often performed by men, mostly from the scheduled castes and tribes, who have inherited the right to perform Thayam. It has its roots in ancient Dravidian culture of South India. When the dancers are costumed as Thayam, they believe that the spirit of that particular deity is transferred to the artist, and they are considered as gods by the devotees to whom they seek blessings. So the importance is that Even a Brahmin bows before this Dalit man when he becomes a Theyam. Theyam are not only capable of blessing the devotees but also cure their illness and give solution to their problems. And some of their common rituals include dancers walking on hot coal, the sacrifice of a rooster, and so on. If you look at this image, we can find the colorful costume and the exotic makeup, which are the highlights of Theyyam. The Theyyam performer is called Kolam, who represents a divine, mythological, or heroic character. The facial makeup is so intricate that each artist has to lie on the floor for hours while the designs are painted on their faces. The most sacred part of the costume is the headgear, which is made from tender coconut leaves. The facial makeup and the headgear vary from character to character, and the crown is made from bamboo splices and wooden planks, which are covered with color clothes, coconut leaves, and flowers. There are arm ornaments, breastplates, bangles, garland, and other body decoration which bring about this exotic nature and the color of Theyyam. Coming to the text, the Dancer of Kannur. This chapter deals with certain prominent ideas. William Dalrymple is not simply concerned about giving a description, a mere description of Theyyam here, but he is concerned about Haridas, he is concerned about Theyyam, he is also concerned about the transformation that Haridas undergoes before, during, and after the Theyyam performance, and at the other times when Haridas leads his life as a prison warder. That is again taken into consideration. With this background, he brings in the idea of the relevance of Theyyam in the caste-ridden society. And he also addresses how Haridas looks at Theyyam as a tool and weapon to fight the unjust social system. So to start with, he makes 3 visits. William Dalrymple makes 3 visits to Kerala, and each of these visits give him different revelations. So the first visit is when he sees Haridas as a Theyyam artist who is lying down on the floor, waiting to be covered with makeup and to become the Vishnu Murti that he is preparing himself to be. So there is a great description of how the Theyyam performance begins. He talks about how the people are crowded before the shrine and they all await the transformation of this normal human being to a Theyyam. And being interviewed by William Dalrymple, Haridas replies that it is difficult to describe. And he feels that he is tensed before this Theyyam actually happens. It is relevant that he says that he is not nervous of the art of the performance as such, but he is nervous of the God coming. He is nervous that the God might refuse to come to him. He is nervous that he might not have that intensity of position. So that is one revelation into Haridas. The way he describes it is that he says the light stays with you all the way during the performance. You become the deity, you lose all fear. Even the voice changes, God comes alive and takes over. And the person who is performing the Theyyam is just a vehicle, he is the medium. And in that trance, it is God who speaks. And only when the headdress is removed, it ends. So there is also a reference to the other dancers who are getting ready to be performed, and he comes to this realization that these people are not merely Theyyam artists, but when they are not performing Theyyam, the other 10, all the other 10 months, they lead a normal life. They lead a normal life, sometimes of humiliation, sometimes of ignorance, and sometimes of neglect. For example, Haridas, when he is not a Theyyam, is a jail warder. There is another person who performs Theyyam who is called Narasimha. He is not, when he is not a Theyyam, he works as a waiter. Chamundi becomes a wedding decorator. The person who plays the role of Bhagavati, when he is not performing the role of Bhagavati, he is a conductor. So these people, all these people, before or when they're not performing the Theyyam, when they're not being the Theyyam artists, they lead a totally different kind of life. So after this, he comes to visit Haridas after 2 months when he is not performing Theyyam. And Haridas is actually surprised to see that William Dalrymple recognizes him. That's when he talks about the kind of exploitation that these people undergo. He says that even the Brahmins who take blessings from them when they are Theyyam do not recognize them when they don't perform that role. So he is actually surprised to see that. And this is when we find how um, revolutionary his perspective of Theyyam is. He says that many of the upper caste people have changed the way they behave to Dalits, but many others still resolute in their caste bigotry, and they refuse to mix with these people when they are not Theyyam. They may pay respect to a Theyyam artist, but outside it they are casteist. The third visit happens 9 months later. That's when he gives in detail a description of the Theyyam performance as such. So he says that two priests they approach this Theyyam and they give this person who is playing the role of a bowl of toddy and uh, which that god drinks in a single gulp, and then suddenly the drums start beating and uh, another deity appears. So one after the other, the gods come and take their seats in the midst of the entire performance, and then they are handed huge cleavers, and from one side they start bringing in chickens, and there is a sacrifice of these roosters happening, and the people who play the roles of Theyyam, they start drinking the blood from the chicken. After all this comes to an end, William Dalrymple meets Haridas, and he says that these 2 months when they perform Theyyam are the best of their lives. And the other 10 months are really hard. That is when they get to face the real oppression in the name of caste. And here, it is important to notice that Haridas, in spite of all the oppression, in spite of all the difficulties he faces, he believes that Theyyam is a tool and a weapon, because this is the only time when they get to bless their oppressors. When they become the gods, when they become gods, there is a reversal, there is a shifting of the power roles. The so called powerless Dalit suddenly becomes godlike, and they get to bless the people who oppress them. So, in that way, he finds Theyyam as a tool and a weapon to fight the unjust social system. It is also important to note that Theyyam is not the same as Kathakali. Both are different in their nature, even though both are staged, or even though both of them happen in the village shrines or in the temples, even though both are considered as temple art forms, we understand that Theyyam is a revolutionary kind of art form than Kathakali. Kathakali is mostly the a form of the Indian classical dance. It is a performance which has its themes as folk mythologies or religious legends and spiritual ideas from Hindu epics and Puranas. There is no transformation exactly like that which happens in Theyyam. In Theyyam, where the Theyyam artist claims that he is possessed by God, Kathakali does not claim that. And this Theyyam art form is important in the sense that it gives some kind of power to the powerless. So that is the life of Haridas, the dancer of Kannur, as presented by William Dalrymple. Thank you.